The Weekend Experiment. Chapter 1. The Announcement. I should have known something was up when Grandpa Jim pulled into our driveway in his ancient Buick at 7 in the morning on a Friday. Normal grandparents call first. Normal grandparents don't show up wearing cargo shorts and a fanny pack like they're about to lead an expedition through the Amazon. Olivia. Mason. Mom called up the stairs. Your grandfather's here. I groaned and rolled over, nearly dropping my phone on my face. I'd been up until 2 a.m. watching TikToks, and my eyes felt like someone had rubbed them with sandpaper. Beside me, my phone buzzed with notifications. 17 new messages in the group chat, 3 Instagram stories I'd been tagged in, and a Snapchat streak that desperately needed saving. Coming, I mumbled, stumbling out of bed in my pajamas. Downstairs, I found my 12-year-old brother Mason already at the kitchen table. Headphones on, iPad propped up in front of him, while he shoveled cereal into his mouth without looking up. Some YouTuber was screaming about Minecraft mods. Mom stood by the coffee maker looking confused, while Dad sat across from Grandpa with the expression of a man who'd just been told he had jury duty. There she is, Grandpa announced, standing up to give me a crushing hug that smelled like Old Spice and coffee. My favorite 15-year-old granddaughter. I'm your only 15-year-old granddaughter, Grandpa. Details. He released me and stepped back, looking me up and down with an appraising eye that made me suddenly conscious of my ratty sleep shirt and messy bun. You look terrible. What time did you go to bed? Never mind. Doesn't matter. You'll catch up on sleep this weekend. He clapped his hands together. Kids, put your devices down. I need your full attention. Mason didn't move. On his screen, someone was still yelling about diamond pickaxes. Mason, Dad said in his warning voice. My brother sighed dramatically, paused his video, and slid one earphone out about 1/4 inch. What? Grandpa walked over and, without ceremony, plucked the iPad from the table and powered it off. Hey! Mason yelped. I was watching that. And now you're not. Grandpa set the tablet face down on the counter, and turned to face us both with the kind of serious expression I usually only saw at funerals, or when he was about to tell one of his long stories about the war. Here's the situation. Your parents have generously agreed to loan you to me for the weekend. I blinked. What? We have plans, Mason protested. Not anymore, you don't. Grandpa pulled a folded piece of paper from his fanny pack and smoothed it on the table. It was a typed list, actual paper with actual typed words on it. We're leaving in 1 hour for my cabin. We'll be back Monday morning. Pack light. Clothes, toiletries, that's it. Can I bring my... I started. No phones. No tablets. No laptops. No smartwatches. No AirPods. No Nintendo Switch. He looked at Mason. And before you ask, no, you can't bring your Kindle either. I know that's just an iPad in disguise. The kitchen fell silent except for the burbling of the coffee maker. You're joking, I said finally. Do I look like I'm joking? He didn't. He looked like a man on a mission, which was somehow more terrifying. Mom? I turned to her pleadingly. You can't be okay with this. Mom exchanged a glance with Dad that I recognized from every time they'd agreed to something behind our backs. The unified parent front. I was doomed. Your grandfather thinks it would be good for you too. Unplug for a while, Mom said carefully. And we agree. We barely survived the pandemic because of screens. Mason argued. This is literally child abuse. It's literally not, Dad said. It's called going outside. We used to do it all the time when I was your age. Yeah, and you also used to get lead poisoning from paint and ride in cars without seatbelts. I shot back. Times change, Dad. Grandpa laughed. She's got spirit, I'll give her that. But this is happening, kiddo. 1 hour. Pack your bags. What are we even going to do all weekend without our phones? I asked, genuinely mystified. Live, Grandpa said simply. The way humans did for thousands of years before Steve Jobs ruined everything. Steve Jobs didn't. 1 hour. He called over his shoulder, already heading to the living room. And if I find so much as a smart toaster in your luggage, I'm confiscating it. I looked at Mason. He looked at me. We both looked at our parents. This is insane, I said. Completely insane. Mason agreed. Dad shrugged. Think of it as an adventure. Think of it as character building, Mom added. Think of it as mandatory, Grandpa shouted from the other room. 58 minutes later, I stood in the driveway with a small duffel bag, watching Grandpa perform what he called a technology sweep of our luggage. He'd already confiscated Mason's phone. Smuggled in a sock. My backup phone. Hidden in my makeup bag. I wasn't going down without a fight. And Mason's iPad, which my idiot brother had tried to hide under a sweatshirt. You two are worse than drug smugglers, Grandpa muttered, handing our devices to Mom, who was watching from the porch with barely concealed amusement. Anything else I should know about? Mason and I shook our heads innocently. Mason? My brother sighed and pulled out his Apple Watch. Olivia? I hesitated, then slowly removed my AirPods case from my pocket. Good. Now you're learning. Grandpa zipped up his fanny pack with an air of finality. All right, soldiers. Load up. The Buick smelled like pine air freshener and old newspapers. Mason called shotgun, which left me sprawled in the massive backseat, staring at the cloth ceiling and contemplating my fate. As we pulled out of the driveway, I automatically reached for my phone to text my best friend Sophie that I'd be offline for the weekend, then remembered with a jolt of horror that I couldn't. Grandpa, I didn't get to tell anyone I'd be gone, I said. My friends are going to think I died. They'll survive. You will too. He turned onto Main Street, heading toward the highway. Besides, when I was in Vietnam, we went months without talking to anyone back home. You can handle 48 hours. Did you have to walk uphill both ways in the snow, too? Mason asked. Smart mouth just like your father. Wonder where he gets it. But Grandpa was smiling. No, but we did have to use rotary phones. Speaking of which, that's your first lesson. Our first lesson is old phones? I said. Your first lesson is communication without instant gratification. At the cabin, there's a working rotary phone. One of the last in the county, probably. You're both going to learn how to use it. I know how phones work, Grandpa. You just type a number and hit the green button. Not these phones, you don't. He merged onto the highway, the Buick chugging along like it was personally offended by the concept of speed limits. These phones, you have to think about every number you dial. You have to be intentional. And if you mess up, you start all over. Mason perked up slightly. Can I prank call people? Absolutely not. Can I? No. We drove in silence for a few minutes. Outside, the suburbs gradually gave way to farmland, then forest. I stared out the window, feeling weirdly disconnected from the world without my phone. What were my friends doing right now? Had Sophie posted anything new? Did anyone comment on my story from last night? I can hear you vibrating with anxiety back there. Grandpa said, catching my eye in the rearview mirror. You're going to be fine, Olivia. Better than fine. How do you know? Because I raised your father in these same woods, and he turned out. Well, he turned out okay, I suppose. Married your mother, didn't he? That was a win. Mom says she lowered her standards. Mason piped up. Your mother has a sense of humor. Another lost art. Grandpa turned onto a smaller road, this one winding through dense pine trees. Anyway, you two are about to learn some very important skills. By Sunday night, you'll know how to read a paper map, make a phone call on a rotary, cook on a charcoal grill, and survive without Wi-Fi. Why? I asked. Why do we need to know any of this? Because the apocalypse is coming. Mason said matter-of-factly. Obviously. Grandpa's a prepper. I'm not a prepper. I'm a realist. Grandpa took another turn, and suddenly we were on a dirt road, bouncing along through what looked like the middle of nowhere. And because you need to know that you can be bored and survive it. You need to know that you can sit with your own thoughts. You need to know that you don't need a screen to be entertained. I could survive being bored. I protested. Could you? When's the last time you sat still for 10 minutes without looking at your phone? I opened my mouth to answer, then closed it. I actually couldn't remember. That's what I thought. Grandpa said softly. The cabin appeared around a bend like something out of a postcard. Or a horror movie, depending on your perspective. It was small, made of dark wood logs, with a stone chimney and a wraparound porch. Solar panels on the roof suggested that Grandpa wasn't completely living in the Stone Age, but the absence of visible power lines was ominous. Welcome to Camp Analog, Grandpa announced, putting the Buick in park. Home for the next 48 hours. Grab your bags. Mason and I climbed out, breathing in air that smelled like pine needles and wood smoke. It was quiet. Not normal quiet. Actually, genuinely quiet. No traffic sounds, no lawn mowers, no distant sirens. Just wind in the trees and birds I couldn't identify. It's so. Mason started. Quiet. I finished. Peaceful. Grandpa corrected. Come on. Let me show you around before you both go into technology withdrawal and start twitching. The cabin was bigger inside than it looked, with a main room that served as kitchen and living area, 2 small bedrooms, and a bathroom that Grandpa proudly announced had running water and everything. The furniture was old but comfortable looking. A sagging couch, 2 armchairs with crocheted afghans, a wooden dining table with mismatched chairs. And there, on the wall, mounted like a trophy, the rotary phone. It was avocado green, made of heavy plastic, with a coiled cord and a circular dial with honest-to-God finger holes. I'd seen them in movies, but never in real life. She's a beauty, isn't she? Grandpa said, catching me staring. Still works too. Party line. What's a party line? Mason asked. Shared telephone line. 3 other families on it. You pick up, you might hear the Hendersons gossiping about someone's new haircut. It's very exciting. I walked over to examine the phone more closely. This is actually kind of cool. In a vintage way. Everything old is vintage now. I remember when it was just called old. Grandpa opened the refrigerator. A modern one, thankfully. And started pulling out food. All right, here's the schedule. Today, you're learning the phone and the map. Tomorrow, we're doing the grill and maybe some hiking. Sunday, we'll see how you're holding up and go from there. Questions? Can we at least know what time it is? I asked, realizing I hadn't seen a clock anywhere. Grandpa pointed to an honest-to-God grandfather clock in the corner. It read 9:47. Anything else? Yeah, Mason said. What if there's an emergency? What if someone needs to reach us? They'll call the cabin phone. Your parents have the number. You're not going to die from being offline for a weekend, I promise. Grandpa set a loaf of bread on the counter. Now, who wants to learn how to make a phone call? Chapter 2. The Rotary Files. The phone was heavier than I expected. I stood there with the receiver in my hand, staring at the dial like it was a puzzle I was supposed to solve. Okay, Grandpa said, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. Let's say you want to call your friend Sophie. What's her number? I rattled it off automatically. I'd memorized it years ago, back in elementary school when we'd first gotten phones. Good. Now dial it. I looked at the rotary dial, then back at Grandpa. How? You stick your finger in the hole next to the number, and you pull it around clockwise until it hits the metal stop. Then you let go and let it spin back. Then you do the next number. That sounds incredibly inefficient. That's because you're used to instant gratification. Just try it. I stuck my finger in the hole for the first digit. A 6. And pulled. The dial resisted more than I expected, making a satisfying mechanical clicking sound as it rotated. When I let go, it spun back slowly, clicking all the way. There you go. Now the next number. It took me almost 30 seconds to dial Sophie's entire number. 30 seconds. By the time I finished, the phone was actually ringing. Wait, you didn't tell me it would actually call her. I panicked as it rang once, twice. Hello? Sophie's mom answered. Oh. Hi, Mrs. Chen. Is Sophie there? Olivia? Why does your number look so weird on caller ID? I'm at my grandpa's cabin. Can I talk to Sophie? She's at dance practice, honey. Want me to have her call you back? I looked at Grandpa, who shook his head and mouthed, no cell phones. Actually, that's okay. Can you just tell her I'm going to be offline this weekend? So she doesn't think I'm ignoring her? Sure thing. Everything okay? Yeah, just bonding with my grandpa. We said goodbye, and I hung up, feeling oddly accomplished. I did it. You made a phone call. Congratulations, you've achieved what every 6-year-old in 1985 could do. But Grandpa was smiling. Your turn, Mason. My brother approached the phone like it might bite him. Who am I supposed to call? Your choice. Friend, cousin, the local pizza place. Just make a call. Mason picked up the receiver and started to dial his best friend Tyler's number. But on the fourth digit, his finger slipped, and he spun the dial too far. He slammed the receiver down. This is impossible. It's not impossible. It just requires patience. Grandpa picked up the receiver and handed it back to Mason. Try again. Slowly this time. Why can't I just text Tyler that I'll be gone? Because texting is too easy. There's no weight to it. You fire off a message and forget about it. But a phone call? A phone call requires commitment. You have to hear the other person's voice. You have to actually communicate. Grandpa settled into one of the armchairs. Plus, it builds character. Everything you're making us do builds character, I pointed out. Exactly. You two need all the character you can get. Mason tried again, more carefully this time. When Tyler's phone started ringing, my brother's face lit up with genuine excitement. Tyler. Dude, I'm calling you from a rotary phone. Yeah, I know. My grandpa is making me and Olivia stay at his cabin with no phones. I know. It's insane. What? Say that again, you're cutting out. No, I can hear you fine, I just wanted to say that because usually I'm the one who cuts out. I laughed despite myself. Mason talked to Tyler for a few more minutes, mostly just explaining the absurdity of our situation, before hanging up. See? Grandpa said. Not so bad, right? It was actually kind of fun, Mason admitted. Tyler thought it was hilarious. Good. Now, Olivia, call someone else. Your boyfriend, maybe? I don't have a boyfriend, Grandpa. Girlfriend? Oh my God, just. No. I'll call my cousin Emma. I dialed Emma's number, taking my time with each digit. She answered on the third ring, sounding confused about the weird number, and I explained the situation. We talked for maybe 5 minutes. About her upcoming volleyball tournament, about my history project, about absolutely nothing important. But it was nice. Different from texting. More real, somehow. When I hung up, Grandpa was watching me with a knowing expression. What? I asked. Nothing. Just noticing that you smiled more during that 5-minute phone call than you probably do during 5 hours of texting. That's not. I stopped, because he might have been right. Whatever. Language is imprecise when you have all the time in the world to craft a perfect response, Grandpa said, standing up and stretching. Phone calls are messy. You say, and sometimes you talk over each other. But that's life. Life is messy. He walked to the kitchen and opened a drawer, pulling out a large folded paper. Speaking of messy, let's talk about maps. He spread the map across the dining table, and Mason and I gathered around. It was a topographical map of the entire region, covered in contour lines, symbols, and tiny text. Roads were marked in different colors, towns labeled in various fonts. It looked like something from a museum. This, Grandpa announced, is how people used to navigate before they had a British lady living in their phone telling them to turn left. Why is it so complicated? Mason asked, peering at the tangle of lines. It's not complicated, it's detailed. Big difference. Grandpa pointed to a spot in the center. This is us. This is the cabin. Now, let's say I wanted to drive to town to get supplies. Olivia, how would you normally do this? I'd open Google Maps and type in the address. And if you didn't have Google Maps? I'd ask Siri for directions. And if you didn't have Siri? I'd ask someone? And if there was no one to ask? I stared at the map, feeling suddenly very small. I genuinely don't know. Grandpa nodded. That's what I figured. Most kids your age would be completely helpless without GPS. So let's fix that. He spent the next hour teaching us how to read the map. How the brown contour lines showed elevation, how the scale worked, how to identify landmarks and roads. He showed us how to measure distances using the legend, how to orient the map to north, how to trace a route from point A to point B. Now, he said finally, tomorrow we're driving to Millerville for supplies. Olivia, you're going to navigate using only this map. No phones, no GPS, just you and the paper. What if I get us lost? Then we get lost. And then we figure out how to get unlost. That's part of the adventure. Mason, who had been mostly quiet during the map lesson, spoke up. Grandpa, can I ask you something? Shoot. Why do you care so much about this stuff? Like, why does it matter if we can read a map or use a rotary phone? We're never going to need these skills. Grandpa was quiet for a moment, folding the map carefully along its creases. You know what I did when I was in Vietnam? You were in the war, Mason said. We know. I was a radio man. I carried a 25-pound radio on my back, and my job was to communicate with headquarters and other units. Lives depended on me knowing how to use that equipment, how to read maps, how to navigate using just a compass and landmarks. He sat down heavily. But that's not why this matters. Then why? I asked. Because technology is wonderful, but it's also fragile. The power goes out, your phone dies, the cell towers go down. And suddenly you're helpless. But more than that. He looked at both of us seriously. You two spend so much time looking at screens that you're missing the world right in front of you. You're missing conversations, sunsets, the smell of rain, the way your face feels in the wind. You're missing life. We're not missing life, I protested. We're just experiencing it differently. Are you? Or are you experiencing other people experiencing life, and calling that the same thing? I didn't have an answer for that. Grandpa stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the forest. When I was your age, I was bored out of my mind most of the time. No internet, 4 TV channels if you were lucky, nothing to do but go outside or read a book or talk to people. And you know what? Some of my best memories are from those boring times. Building a fort in the woods. Learning to fish with my dad. Sitting on the porch and talking with my friends for hours about nothing. You can do all that stuff with phones, Mason pointed out. You can. But do you? When's the last time either of you just sat outside and did nothing? Again, I had no answer. This weekend isn't about making you hate technology, Grandpa said. It's about showing you that you don't need it to be happy. That you can be present. That you can be patient. That you can be. He paused, searching for the word. Enough. Just as you are, without the constant stimulation. The cabin felt very quiet after that. All right, Grandpa said finally, breaking the silence. I'm going to start lunch. You two can explore, read a book from the shelf, play cards. Whatever you want. Just no screens. What if we get bored? Mason asked. Then be bored. Boredom is good for you. Builds character. Everything builds character with you, I muttered. That's because you're both works in progress. Like sourdough. Speaking of which, I'm making grilled cheese. Hope you're hungry. The rest of the afternoon passed strangely. Without phones to occupy us, Mason and I were forced to actually interact with each other. We played gin rummy with a deck of cards so old they were soft and bent. We looked through Grandpa's bookshelf and found old paperback novels with yellowed pages. I started reading a mystery novel from the 1970s while Mason paged through a comic book collection. And we talked. Actually talked, not just existed in the same room while looking at different screens. This is kind of nice, Mason admitted around 4 o'clock. It's weird, but nice. Yeah, I agreed, surprised to find I meant it. It is. Grandpa made dinner. Pot roast with potatoes and carrots, cooked in an actual oven. And we ate at the table together, talking about everything and nothing. No phones to interrupt us, no notifications to check. Just conversation. After dinner, as the sun started to set, Grandpa suggested we go outside. Why? Mason asked. You'll see. We followed him out to the porch, where he had 3 chairs set up facing west. The sky was starting to turn colors. Pink and orange and purple, bleeding together like a watercolor painting. We're going to watch the sunset, Grandpa announced, settling into his chair. That's it? I asked. We're just going to sit here and watch the sun go down? That's it. No phones, no photos, no posting about it. Just watching. It felt weird at first, just sitting there. My hands kept reaching for a phone that wasn't there. I kept thinking about what I would caption this if I was posting it on Instagram. The sunset was beautiful, objectively, but without being able to photograph it and share it, did it even count? But then something shifted. I stopped thinking about the sunset as content and started actually seeing it. The way the light caught the edges of the clouds. The way the colors changed minute by minute. The way the temperature dropped as the sun sank lower, raising goosebumps on my arms. "Grandpa?" Mason said quietly. "Yeah, buddy? I think my brain is broken. I keep thinking I should be doing something." Grandpa chuckled. "That's not your brain being broken. That's your brain being used to constant stimulation. Just sit with it. Let yourself be uncomfortable." So we sat. We watched the sun go down in silence. And somewhere in that silence, I felt something release in my chest. Some tension I hadn't even known I was carrying. When the last sliver of sun finally disappeared below the horizon, Grandpa stood up and stretched. "All right. Who wants hot chocolate? With marshmallows?" Mason asked hopefully. "Is there any other kind?" As we headed back inside, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked relaxed. My shoulders weren't hunched. The crease between my eyebrows, the one from squinting at my phone, had smoothed out. Maybe Grandpa was onto something. Chapter 3. Lost and Found. Saturday morning, I woke up to the smell of bacon and the sound of birds that were aggressively cheerful for 7 in the morning. For a disorienting moment, I couldn't figure out where I was or why my alarm wasn't going off. Then I remembered cabin. No phone. Technology sabbatical. I groaned and buried my face in the pillow. "Rise and shine." Grandpa's voice boomed from the kitchen. "We've got a big day ahead." Mason stumbled out of the other bedroom looking like a zombie. "Why are mornings a thing that exist?" "Because the sun rises, and we're not nocturnal. Come eat." Breakfast was scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, and orange juice squeezed from actual oranges. Everything tasted better than it should have, probably because I wasn't eating it while watching TikTok. "All right," Grandpa said, pushing back from the table. "Today's mission. Drive to Millerville for supplies. With Olivia as navigator. Then this afternoon, we're learning the ancient art of grilling." "I know how to grill," Mason said. "You just press the button and it heats up." "That's a gas grill. We're using charcoal. There are no buttons involved." Mason looked worried. "Is this going to be hard?" "Everything worth doing is hard at first. That's what makes it satisfying when you get it right." Grandpa handed me the folded map. "Olivia, you're up. Get us to Millerville in one piece." The Buick smelled like morning sun and old coffee. I sat in the passenger seat with the map spread across my lap, trying to remember everything Grandpa had taught me. Find the cabin. Trace the road. Identify landmarks. Easy, right? It was not easy. "Okay," I said as we pulled onto the dirt road. "So we're here, and Millerville is about 20 miles east?" "Southeast," Grandpa corrected. "Try again." I rotated the map, trying to orient it to match the direction we were driving. "Okay, southeast. So we take this dirt road to the main road, then turn left?" "Are you asking me or telling me?" "Telling you. We turn left. If you say so." We drove in silence for a few minutes, the forest thick on both sides of the road. I kept checking the map, trying to match up the squiggly lines with the actual landscape around us. There should be a creek coming up on the right, I said, pointing to a blue line on the map. Sure enough, a minute later, we crossed a small bridge over a babbling creek. Hey! I felt a surge of pride. I did it. Don't celebrate yet. We've got 18 more miles to go. The next turn was trickier. The map showed 3 roads all intersecting, but when we actually got there, there were 4 roads, and none of them had street signs. I said intelligently. What's the problem? Grandpa asked, though he clearly knew exactly what the problem was. The map shows 3 roads, but there are 4 here. So the map is outdated. Welcome to real navigation. What do you do? I stared at the intersection, then back at the map. I guess based on the direction we need to go? Good instinct. Which road feels right? The second one from the left? All right. Let's try it. We took the second road from the left, which immediately plunged into forest so thick it blocked out half the sunlight. I kept checking the map, but without clear landmarks, I had no idea if we were going the right way. Grandpa, I think we might be lost. Might be? Or are? Okay, we're definitely lost. Instead of turning around, Grandpa pulled over to the side of the road. All right. Time for a lesson. When you're lost, what's the first thing you do? Panic? After that, pull out your phone and check GPS? Try again. I thought about it. Stop and figure out where you are. Bingo. Never keep driving when you're lost. You'll just get more lost. He turned off the engine. Now, look at the map. Use the landmarks around us. What do you see? I looked around. Trees. More trees. A few rocks. Nothing helpful. Look closer. What's the sun doing? I glanced up through the canopy. The sun was roughly to our right. It's east of us? Good. And we need to be going southeast. So which way should we turn? I rotated the map again, trying to use the sun as a compass. We should turn around and take the third road instead of the second. There you go. See? You can figure this out. We backtracked and took the third road, which opened up onto a wider paved road after about a mile. I checked the map and found a matching road, and suddenly everything clicked into place. There. We're here. I pointed triumphantly. And Millerville should be about 10 miles that way. Now you're getting it. The rest of the navigation went smoothly. I directed us through 2 more turns, past elementary school and a farm with horses, and finally into the small downtown of Millerville. When we parked in front of the general store, I felt like I'd climbed a mountain. I did it. I said, grinning. I got us here without GPS. You sure did. How does it feel? Really good, actually. Like, I don't know. Accomplished? That's because you used your brain instead of outsourcing to a computer. Your brain likes that. Grandpa unbuckled his seatbelt. Come on. Let's get supplies. And maybe some ice cream. You earned it. The general store was the kind of place that sold everything from fishing lures to fresh produce to magazines from 3 months ago. Grandpa loaded up a basket with charcoal, lighter fluid, hamburger buns, and various snacks, while Mason and I wandered the aisles like we were in a museum. Look at this, Mason said, holding up a dusty pack of playing cards. Actual physical entertainment that doesn't need charging. Wild concept. I agreed, picking up a puzzle box covered in a picture of a lighthouse. Think we could do this without going insane? Probably not. Let's get it. At the checkout, the elderly woman behind the counter peered at us over her glasses. "You kids visiting Jim?" "He's our grandpa," I explained. "Thought so. You have his eyes." She rang up our items with practiced efficiency. "He teaching you the old ways?" "Something like that. Good man, your grandpa. World needs more people who remember how to do things with their hands." She handed Grandpa his change. "You kids stay out of trouble now." "We'll try," Mason said, earning a swat on the arm from Grandpa. Outside, we piled into the Buick with our supplies. Mason clutched a chocolate ice cream cone, I had strawberry, and Grandpa had vanilla. The only real ice cream flavor, he insisted. "All right, navigator," Grandpa said. "Get us home." This time, I knew what I was doing. I traced our route in reverse, calling out turns confidently, and we made it back to the cabin without a single wrong turn. "Proud of you, kiddo," Grandpa said as we pulled up to the cabin. "You learned something today." "Yeah," I admitted. "I guess I did." That afternoon, Grandpa led us around back to where an ancient-looking charcoal grill sat under a tree. "This beauty has been with me for 30 years, he announced, patting the grill like it was a beloved pet. "Doesn't look like much, but she cooks better burgers than any fancy gas grill." "How does it work?" Mason asked, peering at the rusted metal. "Simple. Charcoal, fire, patience. The holy trinity of grilling." Grandpa opened a bag of charcoal briquettes and started arranging them in a pyramid shape in the bottom of the grill. "First, you build your coal bed. Pyramid shape helps them light evenly." "Can't we just use lighter fluid and a match?" I asked. "We could. But where's the fun in that?" He handed me what looked like a metal chimney with a handle. "This is a chimney starter. Fill it with charcoal, put some newspaper underneath, light the paper, and wait for the coals to get hot." That sounds like a lot of steps when we could just use lighter fluid. Lighter fluid makes the food taste like chemicals. Plus, it's dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. This way is slower, but better. I filled the chimney starter with charcoal while Mason crumpled up newspaper. When we lit it, flames shot up through the chimney, making both of us jump back. "It's working," Mason said excitedly. "Give it about 15 minutes, Grandpa said. "You'll know the coals are ready when they're covered in gray ash and glowing red." We sat in the grass watching the chimney starter, which felt like the most boring thing in the world for the first 5 minutes. But then something shifted. The smell of smoke, the crackling of the burning coals, the warmth radiating from the grill. It was almost meditative. "Why does this take so long?" Mason asked. "Because good things take time. That's a lesson you two need to learn. Everything in your life is instant. Instant messages, instant streaming, instant answers. But the best stuff? That takes patience." "Like what?" I challenged. "Like relationships. Like learning a skill. Like cooking a perfect burger." He checked the chimney starter. "Speaking of which, we're almost ready." When the coals were glowing red, Grandpa carefully poured them into the grill and spread them out in an even layer. The heat was intense, even from several feet away. "Now we wait for the grill grates to heat up," he said. "Another 5 minutes. More waiting," Mason groaned. "Welcome to the analog world, kid. Everything takes time." But Grandpa was smiling. "While we wait, who wants to shape the burger patties?" He showed us how to handle the ground beef gently, shaping it into patties without overworking the meat. "You want to make a little dimple in the center," he explained, demonstrating. "Otherwise they puff up in the middle when they cook." When the grill was finally ready, Grandpa placed the burgers on the grates. They sizzled immediately, sending up a cloud of delicious-smelling smoke. How do you know when they're done? I asked. You wait until they're charred on one side, about 4 minutes, then flip them. Then another 4 minutes. No peeking, no pressing down on them with the spatula. Why not? Because pressing them squeezes out all the juices, and you end up with hockey pucks. Patience, remember? We stood around the grill, watching the burgers cook, and for once, I wasn't thinking about my phone or wondering what I was missing online. I was just there. Present. Watching smoke curl up into the sky, smelling charcoal and cooking meat, feeling the heat on my face. This is kind of nice, Mason said quietly. It is, isn't it? Grandpa agreed. There's something primal about cooking over fire. Your ancestors did this for thousands of years. It's in your blood. When the burgers were done, we carried them inside and built elaborate burgers with all the fixings. They were the best burgers I'd ever had. Juicy, smoky, perfectly seasoned. See what I mean? Grandpa said through a mouthful of burger. Worth the wait. After dinner, Mason and I tackled the lighthouse puzzle while Grandpa read a book in his armchair. It was harder than I expected. Without being able to look up a guide or give up and check my phone, we actually had to focus. This is frustrating, Mason muttered, trying to fit together two pieces that clearly didn't go together. That's the point. Frustration builds character. I'm going to have so much character by the end of this weekend, he grumbled. But an hour later, when we finally completed the border of the puzzle, we both felt genuinely accomplished. It was such a small thing, but it mattered in a way that beating a level on a game never quite did. I'm actually having fun, I admitted. Don't sound so surprised, Grandpa said, not looking up from his book. Humans managed to have fun for millennia before the internet existed. As night fell, we went back outside to watch the stars. Without light pollution from the city, the sky was incredible. Thousands of stars scattered across the darkness like someone had spilled glitter. Is that the Big Dipper? Mason asked, pointing. Sure is. And that's the North Star, right there. Sailors used to navigate by the stars, you know. No GPS, no compasses sometimes. Just the sky. How did they not get lost? I asked. Some of them did. But the good ones learned to read the sky like a map. They paid attention. They were patient. They trusted their knowledge. Grandpa pointed out another constellation. That's Orion. The hunter. See his belt? Those 3 stars in a row? We stood there for a long time, learning constellations, watching satellites drift across the sky, just being quiet with the universe. Grandpa? I said eventually. Yeah, sweetheart? Thank you for this weekend. You're welcome. But we're not done yet. Tomorrow's the final test. What's the final test? Mason asked nervously. Grandpa just smiled. You'll see. Chapter 4. The Final Test. Sunday morning, I woke up to silence. Not the peaceful silence of yesterday, but the wrong kind of silence. I sat up in bed, listening, and realized what was missing. The hum of the refrigerator. I padded out to the kitchen and found Grandpa peering into the electrical panel with a flashlight. Power's out, he announced cheerfully. Storm must have knocked down a line somewhere. Can you fix it? Mason asked, appearing in his doorway with serious bedhead. Nope. I can call it in, but it'll probably be out until late tonight or tomorrow morning at least. Maybe longer. He closed the panel door. Which means today's lesson comes a little early. What lesson? I asked suspiciously. How to survive when everything modern stops working. He walked to the kitchen and started pulling food out of the fridge. First priority: save the perishables. Second priority: figure out food and water. Third priority: stay busy so you don't go insane. Is the water out too? Mason asked. Nope. Well water, gravity fed. One of the advantages of the old systems. Grandpa handed me a carton of eggs. But we need to cook everything in the fridge before it goes bad. So we're having a feast for breakfast. We moved all the food to the porch, where it would stay cool in the morning air. Then Grandpa built a fire in the fireplace. Always good to know how to do this, he said. And somehow managed to cook eggs and bacon in a cast iron skillet over the flames. This is like camping, Mason said, watching the eggs sizzle. Camping is just practice for when civilization collapses, Grandpa replied. Which, to be clear, I don't think is happening. But it's good to know you can handle it if it does. After breakfast, with no power for water heating, Grandpa showed us how to heat water for washing up in a pot over the fire. Everything took 3 times as long without electricity, and I started to appreciate just how much modern convenience I'd taken for granted. All right, Grandpa said around mid-morning. Pop quiz. The power's out indefinitely. What do you do? Call the power company? I suggested. Already did. They said it'll be out until very late tonight at earliest. Try again. How do you spend your day? Mason and I looked at each other. Read? I offered. Good. What else? Play cards. Do the puzzle. Go for a walk. Mason was getting into it now. We could explore the woods. Excellent. See? You're learning. Grandpa pulled out the deck of cards. How about we play some poker? Real poker, with actual stakes. We're not old enough to gamble, I pointed out. Who said anything about gambling? We're playing for chores. Loser has to do dishes tonight. We played poker for over an hour, which was way more fun than I expected. Without phones to distract us, we actually paid attention to each other. Reading each other's tells, trash talking, celebrating victories. Grandpa won most hands, but Mason won the overall game with a lucky straight flush. Ha! Mason crowed. No dishes for me. You cheated, I accused. Did not. I just got good cards. Aha! Grandpa laughed. This is what Sundays used to look like. Family time. No distractions. Just being together. After cards, we went for a walk in the woods. Grandpa showed us how to identify different trees, how to spot animal tracks, how to walk quietly so we could see wildlife. We saw a deer, a rabbit, and a hawk circling overhead. This is so quiet, Mason whispered as we watched the hawk. Good quiet or bad quiet? Grandpa asked. Good quiet. Like. My brain isn't screaming at me for once. I knew exactly what he meant. For the first time in forever, I wasn't thinking about what I was missing online, who might be texting me, what notifications I might have. I was just here. In the moment. Present. We walked for over 2 hours, eventually circling back to the cabin. Without phones to check, I had no idea how much time had passed. It felt like time moved differently out here. Slower, but also fuller somehow. All right, Grandpa said when we got back. Time for the final test. I thought this weekend was the final test, I said. This weekend was the warm-up. The final test is this. I'm going into town for a few hours to help a friend with something. You two are staying here, alone, with no power and no phones. Mason's eyes went wide. Alone? What if something happens? Then you handle it. The rotary phone works without power. Landlines used to all work that way. If there's a real emergency, you call 911. Otherwise, you figure it out. He grabbed his keys. I'll be back by dinner time. Don't burn the cabin down. Wait. I called as he headed for the door. What are we supposed to do all afternoon? Whatever you want. Read. Play games. Go outside. Be bored. Just be. He paused at the door. And Olivia? This is important. I need you to be responsible here. Look after your brother. Make good choices. Can you do that? The weight of his trust settled on my shoulders. Yeah. I can do that. I know you can. That's why I'm leaving. He smiled. You two are going to be fine. Better than fine. And then he was gone, the Buick crunching down the gravel drive, leaving us alone in the silent cabin. Mason and I looked at each other. Well, I said. Now what? The first hour was okay. We finished the lighthouse puzzle. All 1,000 pieces. And felt ridiculously proud of ourselves. We made sandwiches for lunch using the bread and cold cuts from the cooler. We played another round of cards. But by hour 2, we were both starting to feel the itch of boredom. I miss my iPad, Mason admitted, flopped on the couch. Is that bad? No. I miss my phone too. I was sitting in Grandpa's armchair, trying to read the mystery novel I'd started, but I kept reading the same paragraph over and over. But I also kind of don't. What do you mean? I thought about it. Like, I miss being able to text Sophie or watch TikTok. But I also don't miss the feeling of always being behind, always missing something. Does that make sense? Yeah, actually. It's like. Mason sat up. It's like my brain is quieter here. Usually it feels like there's a million tabs open all the time, but here it's just a few tabs. Exactly. We sat in silence for a minute. Want to go explore outside? Mason asked. Sure. Let me leave Grandpa a note in case we're not back when he returns. I found a notepad and pen. Actual paper and pen. And wrote. Gone exploring. Back before dinner. O&M. It felt weirdly formal, like something from another era. But also kind of nice. We spent the next hour exploring the area around the cabin. We found a creek and tried to build a dam out of rocks and sticks. We climbed a big tree and sat in the branches, talking about school and friends and all the stuff we never had time to talk about at home. Can I tell you something? Mason said, swinging his legs from the branch. Sure. Sometimes I feel like my whole life is just performing for an audience that isn't there. Like, I do something funny and my first thought is, that would make a great video. Or something cool happens and I think, this would get so many likes. And then I feel weird about it. I do that too. I admitted. Last week I spent 2 hours taking photos for Instagram before realizing I didn't even care about posting them. I just felt like I was supposed to. It's exhausting. Yeah. We sat there for a while longer, just watching the forest. A squirrel ran across the branch above us, scolding us for invading its territory. Birds sang. The wind rustled the leaves. It was all very peaceful and, honestly, kind of perfect. We should probably head back, I said eventually. Before Grandpa gets worried. Grandpa's not the worrying type. True. But I'm supposed to be responsible, remember? We climbed down and walked back to the cabin, taking our time. When we got there, we found Grandpa's Buick in the driveway and smoke coming from the charcoal grill out back. "There you are," Grandpa called when he saw us. "Just in time. I'm grilling hot dogs for dinner." "You left us alone for a test and then came back to cook?" I asked. "The test was to see if you could handle being unplugged and alone. You passed. Now we celebrate." He flipped a hot dog. "How was it?" "Good, actually," Mason said. "We built a dam and climbed a tree and just hung out." "No phones needed?" "No phones needed," I confirmed. Grandpa smiled. "Now you're getting it." That evening, we sat on the porch watching the sunset again. Tomorrow we'd go home, back to our phones and tablets and constant connectivity. But right now, we were just here. "Grandpa?" Mason asked. "Can I tell you something?" "Always, buddy. I don't want to go home tomorrow." I was surprised to realize I felt the same way. "Me neither." "That's a good sign," Grandpa said. "Means you learned something this weekend." "What did we learn?" I asked. "That you're more than your screens. That you can be patient. That you can be present. That you can be bored and survive it." He stretched his legs out. "And maybe, if I did my job right, you learned that some of the old ways aren't just old. They're timeless." "The phone thing was actually kind of cool," Mason admitted. "And I like knowing I can navigate without GPS now. And the grilling," I added. "I want to learn to do that at home." "Your father would love that. He used to help me grill when he was your age." Grandpa stood up. "Come on. Let's play one more round of cards before bed. Tomorrow's going to come early." We played until it got too dark to see the cards clearly, then lit candles and played some more. No electricity, no screens, just us and the flickering candlelight and the sound of shuffling cards. It was perfect. Chapter 5. The Return. Monday morning arrived with the return of electricity. The refrigerator hummed to life around 6 a.m., waking me up. I lay in bed for a while, listening to the modern world reassert itself, and felt a weird sense of loss. "Power's back," Mason said, shuffling into the kitchen in his pajamas. "Yeah." I poured myself orange juice from the carton. Weird how quiet it was without it. I kind of liked it. Grandpa made pancakes for breakfast, and we ate slowly, none of us wanting to rush the morning. Our bags were packed, sitting by the door like unwelcome reminders that the weekend was ending. "Before we go," Grandpa said, pushing back from the table, "I have something for both of you." He disappeared into his bedroom and came back with 2 wrapped packages. Mine was rectangular and flat, Mason's was square and heavier. "Open them," he urged. I unwrapped mine carefully. Inside was a leather-bound journal with blank pages and a nice pen. On the first page, Grandpa had written, "For Olivia. To record the thoughts worth keeping. Love, Grandpa Jim." "It's beautiful," I said, running my hand over the smooth leather. Mason opened his to find a compass. A real, old-fashioned brass compass with an engraved lid. "For Mason. And to always find your way home. Love, Grandpa Jim." "These are amazing," Mason said, turning the compass over in his hands. "I want you to remember this weekend," Grandpa said. "I want you to remember that you can navigate without GPS, communicate without texts, and be entertained without screens. But more than that, I want you to remember how it felt to be present." "We will," I promised, and meant it. The drive home felt different. I sat in the back seat with the map unfolded on my lap, following our route even though Grandpa knew the way. Mason rode in silence, turning the compass over and over in his hands. "You two are quiet," Grandpa observed. "Just thinking," I said. "About what?" "About how weird it's going to be to have my phone back. Like, I kind of want it, but I also kind of dread it. All those notifications and messages and everything I missed." "You don't have to look at it right away," Grandpa pointed out. "Just because you have access to something doesn't mean you have to use it constantly. I guess." We drove in comfortable silence for a while, the highway rolling past. I watched the world go by and tried to memorize the feeling. The way the sun looked coming through the window. The smell of the car, the rumble of the engine. Things I'd never noticed before because I'd always been looking at a screen. When we pulled up to our house, Mom and Dad came out to greet us. Mom immediately pulled me into a hug. "How was it?" she asked. "It was." I searched for the right word. "Good. Really good." "No withdrawal symptoms?" Dad asked, grinning. "Only a few," Mason admitted. Grandpa hauled our bags out of the trunk and handed them over. "Your phones and tablets are inside. Your mom has them in the kitchen." We carried our stuff inside, and there they were. Our devices, charging on the counter, just where we'd left them. I picked up my phone and stared at it. It felt heavier than I remembered. "Go ahead," Grandpa said, standing in the doorway. "Turn it on if you want." I pressed the power button. The screen lit up, and immediately notifications started flooding in. Texts, Instagram notifications, Snapchat messages, TikTok alerts. Hundreds of them. It felt overwhelming. "You okay?" Grandpa asked quietly. "Yeah, I set the phone down. Can I look at this later? I want to tell Mom and Dad about something Mason and I saw in the woods yesterday." Grandpa's face broke into the biggest smile I'd seen all weekend. "Of course, sweetheart. Tell us everything." We sat at the kitchen table. Me, Mason, Grandpa, Mom, and Dad. And talked for over an hour. About the rotary phone and getting lost with the map and building the dam and watching the stars. Our phones sat forgotten on the counter. Finally, Grandpa stood up to leave. "I should get going. Long drive back." "Thank you," I said, hugging him. "For the weekend. For everything. Thank you for coming. You two made an old man very happy." He ruffled Mason's hair. "And you proved something I already knew. You're both smarter and more capable than you give yourselves credit for." After he left, Mason and I looked at each other. "Want to watch some YouTube?" he asked. I glanced at our phones, still sitting on the counter. "Maybe later. Want to play cards instead?" Mason grinned. "Yeah. Let me beat you at poker again." "You didn't beat me. You got lucky. Keep telling yourself that." That night, I sat in my room with my journal open, trying to write about the weekend. My phone was on my desk, notifications still unread. I'd looked at a few, answered some texts, but then put it down. It could wait. I wrote about the rotary phone, about getting lost and finding my way back, about the perfect burgers and the lighthouse puzzle. I wrote about sitting in the tree with Mason and watching the sunset and feeling, for maybe the first time in years, completely present. And then I wrote something that surprised me. I don't want to give up my phone or technology. I like being able to talk to my friends and watch videos and look things up instantly. But I also don't want to forget what this weekend taught me. That I can survive without it. That I can be patient. That I can be bored. That I can be enough, just as I am, without the constant need for stimulation or validation. Grandpa said this weekend was about learning to be present. I think it was also about learning to choose. To choose when to engage with technology and when to put it down. To choose patience over instant gratification. To choose real experiences over documented ones. I don't know if I'll be able to maintain this feeling when school starts again and everyone else is on their phones and life goes back to normal. But I want to try. Because this weekend, I felt more like myself than I have in years. I closed the journal and picked up my phone. There were still 200 plus unread notifications. I took a deep breath, opened the settings, and turned off all non-essential notifications. Then I texted Sophie. Hey, sorry I've been MIA. Long story. Want to hang out tomorrow? Maybe go for a walk or something? Actually talk instead of just texting? She responded immediately. OMG yes. I've missed you. What happened? I smiled and put the phone down. I'd tell her tomorrow, in person. Some stories were better told face to face. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in the cafeteria at school when Mason slid into the seat across from me. Look, he said, showing me his phone. His screen time for the week was down by almost 60%. Nice. How'd you do it? Deleted TikTok and moved all my games to a folder on the last page. Now I actually have to think about whether I want to use them before I open them. He took a bite of his sandwich. Also been reading more. And going outside. Yeah? Yeah. Tyler and I built a fort in his backyard last weekend. No screens, just hammers and nails and wood. It was awesome. I smiled. Grandpa would be proud. Have you talked to him lately? Last night. I called him. On the actual phone, not FaceTime. How was it? Good. Different. We talked for like an hour about nothing important. I pulled out my journal, which I'd been carrying in my backpack. I've been writing every day. Just whatever I'm thinking about. That's cool. Mason stood up. Hey, some of us are going to play basketball after school. No phones, just playing. You in? Yeah, actually. I am. As Mason walked away, I glanced at my phone. There were a few notifications. Some likes on my Instagram post from yesterday. A couple texts in the group chat. But they could wait. I had 10 minutes before class started, and I wanted to write down something Grandpa had said last night, about patience being a muscle you had to exercise. Around me, everyone else was on their phones. Scrolling, typing, watching videos with headphones in. A few months ago, I would have been doing the same thing. But now, sitting there with my journal and pen, I felt different. Not better than anyone else, just more intentional. More present. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Still on for our hike Saturday? I smiled and texted back. Absolutely. Bring a real camera instead of your phone camera? Want to try actually experiencing it instead of documenting it. You're so weird now. I love it. See you Saturday. I put my phone away and went back to my journal. In the margin, I drew a small sketch of a rotary phone, a map, and a charcoal grill. The weekend at Grandpa's cabin felt like it had happened both yesterday and a million years ago. But the lesson stuck. I was still an iPad kid, probably. Still part of a generation raised on screens and instant gratification. But now I was an iPad kid who knew how to read a map, make a phone call on a rotary, grill the perfect burger, and survive a weekend unplugged. More importantly, I was an iPad kid who knew the difference between being connected and being present. And that, Grandpa had taught me, made all the difference in the world. The bell rang for class. I closed my journal, left my phone in my backpack, and headed to history. Later, I'd check my messages. Later, I'd scroll through social media. Later, I'd reconnect with the digital world. But right now, in this moment, I was just Olivia. Present, patient, and perfectly content to be exactly where I was. And that, I realized, was the real lesson all along.